We are so far removed from the idea of America and its minarchism written in the United States Constitution, where we have to bring her back to where she belongs. Thank you for listening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. I appreciate y'all tuning in this evening to this episode of Chasing Life, Liberty, and Minarchy. I want to take a moment of privilege and thank everybody that have been consistent with me from day one, day 2, and 3. Even the ones that are consistent now, I want to thank y'all. I know this weekend, this previous weekend was, it was just one of those weekends, right? It's a long weekend, and with the technical difficulties and things of the nature, me not feeling well, like there's just a lot of things going on all at one time, and I appreciate y'all. For those of you that did send prayers, all that good stuff, thank you. I appreciate that, and that whole 9 yards. But I really want to thank y'all for your patience with the old wise one here behind the microphone. Just navigating the best way he can, the best way he knows how, right? So with that being said, I'm not going to hold you too long tonight. We're going to get right down to business. But first and foremost, before we do get down to business, make sure you've shared this, all that good stuff, right? Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you like this whole 9 yards. Make sure you check out the Patreon, where I sometimes I post some stuff that'll make your brain tingle. Some it may make you mad at me, and I like that too, because it means you're thinking about something or you're passionate about something. I don't take it any other way. But make sure you're checking out the Patreon, patreon.com/TOLMF. And if you don't want to watch it on Rumble, you can check it on, on the audio side using, your Apple or your, Android or whatever, wherever you get your podcasts. If you don't listen to live, you can find this one there too. Greatly appreciate it. I'm actually pretty thrilled about this new journey. I've been kind of skimming through it, and the things I have already written, things I'm still kind of writing on the fly and putting together. I think this series may be better than the last one. I might top myself on this one. I hope I can top myself on this one. If not, then it's just a complete failure. But anyway, no, it's never a complete failure. But remember, in our first episode, way back on the 27th of August, I know it seems forever, don't it, guys? Wow. It's been 2 whole weeks. I haven't done an episode on Chasing Life. Jeez, I'm such a failure, guys. Oh my God. But anyway, seriously, in the first episode of this new series, we defined 2 great paths to a more minimal state, right? The slow, steady approach of incrementalism, right? And the rapid fundamental shift of revolution. Today, we're going to step firmly onto the first path. Okay, we're trading the grand philosophical concepts for the gritty, frustrating, and often unheralded work of gradual reform. This isn't about grand gestures. It's about patience, strategic work, chipping away at the state's power piece by piece, the same way they chipped away at ours, right? Over the next, I'd say, 45 minutes, we will explore 5 distinct real world case studies from across this country, including right here in our great state of Florida. Those of you in Florida, you'll be interested ears poked up in the air by now. We'll examine how reformers have used fiscal, regulatory, and social tactics to roll back the state. And at the end, we'll face the biggest challenge to this entire strategy: the unyielding, often unseen force that constantly pushes government to grow. This is the Incrementalist Playbook, and it's a lesson in both hope and frustration. Now, in our very first case study, right? Our very first case study I kind of poked through, right, is fiscal incrementalism and Tabor. Okay. One of the most powerful, I think personally, most powerful and debated examples of fiscal incrementalism is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, aka Tabor. Colorado has this law, right? This. Well, technically, it's not a law. I'm sorry, it's a constitutional amendment. Let me get it right. It's not a law. It's a constitutional amendment, right? This was a citizen-led constitutional amendment that was passed in 1992, right? And the short history on this is basically the people of the state were tired of the rising taxes and state spending, right? This was also a movement that was a reaction to the public tax revolts, right? At the end of the 90s, right? Notably against Prop 13 in California. And voters felt that a booming economy was automatically generating more government revenue without their consent, right? And there are proponents like Douglas Bruce, those of you in Colorado, name probably rings a bell, right? Championed the idea that citizens should have a say in how much their government grows. He is exactly right. I like this Douglas Bruce guy. At his, and mind you, Douglas, if I remember correctly, Douglas Bruce was is a Democrat. Let me say not was, but he is a Democrat. Let me make sure. No, he was a Republican. He was a Republican. I'm sorry, he was a Republican. My fault. But he had a lot of Democrat support for Tabor. Crazy, right? But anyway, those are the older Democrats. Those are the Democrats before Bill Clinton, right? Clinton and before, but we're not getting to that, right? But he did. He championed the idea that citizens should have a say on, how much their government grows. Now, Tabor, after reading the constitutional amendment and kind of the things that add on to it, I didn't get really deep into the nuance of it, right? But at its core, Tabor says government revenue cannot grow faster than a combination of inflation and population growth. I think that's best freaking idea I've ever heard in my life. Like, I want to shake all these people's hands because, we talk about a minimal state, right? Well, the behemoth will grow the more money it gets, right? I mean, let's look at our federal government in contrast, right? They get so much money from the American people, they have enough money to create whole three-letter agencies inside of three-letter agencies that you'll never, ever know about with full staff, chief of staff for all the heads, because the money, right? They just take it. The federal government's become a behemoth, right? It's become the behemoth because of our money, right? So, with that, any revenue, okay, under Tabor, right? Any revenue collected at that cap must be refunded to the to the taxpayers. Now, my take, right? Now you got a little bit of history on that, right? Now, this Tabor is a statist nightmare. It's a statist nightmare. And I want to ask you guys, why do you think? And leave it in the comments if you're willing to type, right? Or live chat, or leave it in the comments, either or, whichever one you feel fit, right? But Tabor is a statist nightmare. because Colorado, 92, the citizens, right, taught a master class on institutionalizing fiscal restraint, right? Let's think about this a minute, right? Just right there, right? I know you have the Convention of States, right? And a lot of you know I was part of that at one point in time, right? And then I threw my name out of the hat for a lot of ethical reasons, right? But the Convention of States want to pass an amendment to the Constitution to restrain the federal government, right? And their spending. But it's nothing. Nothing they've proposed at Convention of States is anything like Tabor. Nothing like it. Could you imagine the citizens push? And I'm sure some people have, but you haven't heard about it because people want the government to grow enormous, right? This is something we could start on our own states, get it in our own state constitutions, right? Now, mind you, keep in mind, people, right? States like Florida, you don't need Tabor, right? These are only for states that collect, right? Listen to me, that actually collect state income tax, right? If your state doesn't collect state income tax, you don't need Tabor, right? You don't need it, right? Now, with that being said, it could be tailored to property tax, but that's just too much long division, right? That's way too much long division. I looked at that and I was like, oh no, we can't do that. But if your state collects state income taxes, right, collect taxes off of the economy, right, they're capped, right. They got to send that money back. Governments don't like it when they got to give you money back. They don't like it, right? They don't like it when they give you back. But again, right? This is what needs to be passed, right? On the federal, put in our federal constitution to constrain them and give us our money back when they've grown too much, right? They can say we're broke and we're a trade deficit. Tax dollars don't say that because look, as much money as they get in tax revenue, and again, right? Tax the what's it the Jobs Tax Cut and Jobs Act that actually brought in more tax revenue, right? By doing a few things like raising the standard deduction a little bit. I'm just saying, we ain't going down that road, but you see those little things like that, right? Those little things like that. And yes, excise tax is kind of, you can include excise tax in that, but yeah, remember, excise tax is a fixed number, right? That's a fixed number. That's not a fluctuating number, right? That you could actually include in that because that's what they put on fuel, right? Um, so technically you can't say, oh, you sold too much fuel. Well, people buy the fuel, right? And remember, the excise tax also goes to maintain the roads, right? The road tax. So we can't give that money back per se. I mean, there's better ways of managing it. 100%, right? 100%, right? But we can't we got to have some money to maintain the roads, even though sometimes that money gets put into a fund that we don't know where it's going and who's got their hand in it. But that's for us to help try to figure out and clean up, right? Um, but this Tabor, right, in particular, right, it doesn't rely, right. This is the good thing. It doesn't rely on the goodwill of politicians because we know politicians don't have goodwill. For all intents and purposes, all politicians have ill will towards its constituency, 100%. And that's the attitude you have to have, right? That is the mentality you have to have. Even though, yeah, they may be your friend, may be friendly to you, they get things done, but did not let you start falling in love and falling into the trap, right? You treat them like they're gonna, every time you see them, they're a different person, and when you talk to them, right? Now, again, right? this constitutional amendment called Tabor, right? Again, the goodwill of politicians is not dependent upon, right? It's literally a constitutional hammer to limit the state's natural tendency to grow. It's literally like, nope, sorry, you're going to get thwarted today if you try to go get that. You're going to get thwarted. Like, that's it. The whole hammer, like all of that, if you try it. And they keep trying. I see someone, I think, who said, someone said in the chat, Trish Dish said debrucing Tabor. And that's what they want to do when they want to abolish Tabor so they can just continue to spend and to start spending the people's money the way they think they should see fit. No, absolutely not. The people said, no, you're not doing that. Sorry, government. But they'll get some, and here's the crazy thing, right? There will be some dumbass Democrats in the state of Colorado that will actually want to repeal it based on a lie they've been told. Like, you've been enjoying all this money back in your pocket all these years. Now you want to just give them the money back? That's fuck out of here. Fuck you, mean. It's crazy to see how these people think, like how you've enjoyed the benefit of this. It was the right thing to do to keep more money in your pocket, but you want to give it back to them. Oh, well, we need social welfare programs. Well, create a charity, bitch. Create a whole ass charity. If you want to help unfortunate people, create a 501c3 charity and help them that way. You don't want the government helping them. You don't want the government helping them. You know what's funny? And this is kind of a sidetrack, but kind of on the same on the same line here. Here in Florida, you know how our surgeon general is in in compliance with RFK about not mandating the vaccine, right? Not mandating the vaccine in the schedule. Everyone's like, I'm going to go get mine now. I can't believe you. Fuck you, RFK. And I was like, oh shit. Oh snap. You sat here. Y'all sat right here. Y'all sat right here and said Trump didn't handle the COVID correctly. He didn't get the vaccines out. Wait, we're not taking the vaccines because it's Trump. We don't trust Trump. Biden's office, we're going to get all of our boosters. Yeah. And I'm like, the fuck? Wait, it's the same vaccines that Trump made. What the fuck you mean? You right? The Democrat told her to go get the damn thing, right? And then RFK says, "No, we taking it off the schedule, bro. I'm going to go get my vaccine." I'm like, damn, the Republican told you we're taking it off the schedule and you're still going to do it. What the fuck? I can't laugh any harder. I can't laugh any harder. Like, you lift the bureaucracy off of people and they still run and do the same Oh my god. This is this in real time. This is in real time. This is what's crazier about this. This is in real time. They're posting their videos like, yeah, look at me. Fuck you, RFK. I'm getting my shit. Yeah. Like, here comes the dark winter Joe Biden was talking about. Yes, I'm laughing. I don't care anymore. I stopped caring a long time ago, people. Not say I don't care about people. Don't get me wrong. Don't don't get me wrong. But when you were told to do it, you did it. Right? You had a choice then to not do it, but you wanted just to comply. RFK said, no, the government is no longer putting it in a schedule saying that you have to do it. Oh no, I'm still gonna go do it because in spite of you. Oh, fuck. Who does something to harm themselves in spite of somebody else? Like, what the fuck is going on here? Somebody help me, please. Help. Help. Um, help. Thank you. But anyway, I just thought I'd just throw that out there. I'll throw that out there. But kind of it's kind of weird how the state, right, controls these people. You say you're gonna take the mandate away, you're still gonna go do it, and it's not even it's the state told you to do it, you went and did it anyway. Jesus Christ. Now you had the freedom of choice and not to do it, you're gonna do it anyway. Jesus Christ. Anyway, anyway, since Tabor was ratified into their constitution, right? Again, the overage goes back into the hands of the people, right? That allows them, right? What do we talk about? It allows people to make their own economic decisions instead of the bureaucracy making it for them, right? Now, please understand, I've talked about the other side of this, and I'm going to now, right? Because the nuance is critical in this, right? Because a lot of critics argue that Tabor starves the beast, claiming, right, it has led to chronic underfunding of essential services, which we know is a damn lie. But anyway, they point to a decline in Colorado's per pupil education spending relative to the national average, right? These critics also argue that a balanced approach is needed. Now, proponents of this, however, counter that this forces a more efficient and prioritized use of taxpayer money. They also argue that the state should not have an unlimited budget and that fiscal discipline is a virtue. Now, this particular debate fully encapsulates the central tension of incrementalism, okay, is a smaller government inherently better, even if it means fewer public services? Now, it's a question that is just as relevant here in Florida, where debates over the property tax caps and local government spending are always a constant source of that political tension in the communities, right? In my second case study, okay, I did a little bit of research into regulatory incrementalism and occupational licensing, okay. Because keep in mind, incrementalism isn't just about money, right? It's about freedom, right? And a key target for reformers has been occupational licensing. Yeah, I know what these things are: license to be a barber, things of that nature, right? It's a set of, we know these occupational licensing, right? It's regulations that govern, people who work in a certain profession, right? Food industry, um, um, estheticians, barbers, things of that nature, right? And keep in mind, over probably I would say the last 50 years, according to my graph here that I have, the number of licensed professionals have exploded, right? And we're talking all professions. We're talking doctors, lawyers, right? To over a quarter of all U.S. workers today are licensed professions. Think about that, right? So, in theory, right, these licenses protect the public from unqualified practitioners. But here's my counter, right? In reality, they often serve as a barrier to enter, protecting the incumbents that are in the profession from competition. See, and we've had this conversation about open and free markets, right? When you put in a regulation, or if you put a license in place, right, that license can serve as a barrier of people getting into a profession, right? Or if you set the fees too high, the little man can't get in on the lower level, while that creates a monopoly, right? These are the things we have to talk about when it comes to licenses and things of that nature, right? Now, the list of licensed job is probably longer than both my legs and my both my arms in a line together, right? Think about it. You need a license to be an interior designer. You need a license to be a casket maker. In some places, even a shampooer. You have a license to be a shampooer, right? And in some states, right? Some states, check this out. I looked this up. Requires 248 days of training for a license to shampoo hair. Think about that a minute. 248 days of training to be licensed to shampoo hair. Now let's put this in contrast, right? That's 7 times more than being trained to be an EMT, right? That is 130 days more to be trained to be post certified. Those that do not know what post is, that's peace officer and safety training. Yeah, it's almost 120 days more. Almost 100, well, almost 100. Well, actually, we take that back. 60 days more to shampoo hair than to go through post training. Hmm. Yeah, you heard it right. See, for me, these licenses is not about public safety, right? It's about regulatory capture, right? Right. And basically, what I mean by regulatory capture is a regulatory agency, right? That's created to act in the public interest, but instead comes to serve the interests of the commercial side of the industry, right? It's supposed to regulate, right? This is why we talk about lobbying, right? Lobbying, right, with money in Congress to get laws passed to benefit the big pharmas, the big oils, the big ag, right? And it takes out mom pa farmers. It takes out the mom pa grocery stores in your town, right? That's what I'm talking about, right? That's the kind of similar things I'm talking about, right? Because these incumbent firms, again, use the lobbying and political influence, right, to create those barriers, right? Raising the prices and keeping new competitors out every single time. I don't actually think about that, right? Now, on the local level, if you take me personally, my mindset goes into this, right? And we're fighting these specific localized battles like licensing, right? Because remember, each license repealed is a win for economic liberty, right? It sends a message, right, that the state's role is not to grant permission to work, but to protect the right of individuals to engage in voluntary exchange, bartering, right? Because it happens all the time, right? Oh, girl, I'll do your hair, girl. I'll braid your hair, girl. Just bring me over, a 20-pound sack of those grits you got over there. All right. Right? Happens all the time, right? Happens all the time, right? So why can we not do this Why do we need licenses to do these certain things? I want people to really think about that. In my third case study that I've done, right, and we're going to talk about school choice and education reform, right? Because we know for a fact that the monolithic public school system is the cornerstone of state power, right? And if you didn't know that, now you know. Just think about what they're teaching these children across the country, right? Constitution bad, America bad, right? This is what they're teaching these kids, right? We know this. The monolithic public school system, right? Now, an incrementalist approach to this is school choice, right? And obviously, we've heard about school choice. We've talked about school choice on Southern Liberty, um, and all that, right? Because of the dissatisfaction in the public education system, right? Test scores, bureaucracy, the one size fits all curriculum, all of that, right? But a sudden privatization of education, right, introduces competition through programs like vouchers and education savings accounts, right? ESAs, right? ESAs, right? Very similar to HSAs, right? Health savings accounts, right? Now, I can tell you here in Florida, school choice is a major force here, right? Now, as of 2024, 1.8 million students and over 50% of all K through 12 students are now in a school of their family's choice. That's here in Florida, right? This shift is powered by programs that allow parents to take their share of education funding and use it for private schools, charter schools, and homeschooling expenses, right? Now, now this is for me, right, when I look at this, right, this is a very critical step towards an education system, right, where power resides in the individual and not the institution, right? It also forces schools, whether public or private, to compete for students, right, theoretically driving up quality and innovation, right? Now, I would say the nuance right here is that these programs still rely on government funding, okay, which a lot of critics will argue, to keep argue with me to keep the state's influence in the system, right? But, but, right, it is a very pragmatic approach, incremental step that empowers the parents today while we build a case for a more privatized education system in the future. And guys, remember, if you're enjoying this conversation, please just go ahead and like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. Listen to it later, do the things, find it on all your podcast platforms, all that on the audio, or watch it here on Rumble, or hear my voice on Rumble. And got a few more things to go. Right, the next case study I have here is a constitutional carry and gun rights. Right, that's fresh on our minds. Right, the fight for gun rights is for me personally, I think it's a textbook case of incrementalist playbook in action, right? The movement began with the focus on legal battles and legislative pushes that challenged a century of like government mandated permitting, right? Because remember, you had to go. Some states, you get a firearm, you got to go fill out a card. You got to do a background check. You got to do all these things, right? And then you get your CCW card. You got to carry it with you with your license and all that stuff. Now, everybody wants to, I think we would all agree that we want to abolish all all gun laws, right? But we can't just abolish all gun laws at once, right? Without a replacement or a foundational replacement, right? So, because you notice we didn't go straight for that, right? Instead, as a people, state by state, pursued a series of, I would say, step by step legislative victories, right? Now, this strategy that we're talking about for the fight for gun rights to get the constitutional carry, right, started with the push for shall issue concealed carry permits, right? Making it easier for law abiding citizens to get a license, right? This was the critical first step, okay, that established the right to carry as a common and accepted practice. This strategy culminated with the passage of constitutional carry, right? And I think it's, God, almost 28 states that are constitutional carry, including Florida now. So, and with that, think about this a minute. Not only constitutional carry, right? It's not a new regulation, right? I want people to understand that, right? Because you think a lot, because, excuse me, when you add laws, statutes and acts, it's adding new quote unquote regulation per se, right? But constitutional carry is a reversal of a regulation, right? It reestablishes, right? Constitutional carry reestablishes the principle that a citizen's right to self-defense is a negative right instead of a positive right. And those of you that are confused on negative right, positive right, I'll put it in kind of layman's terms a second, right? Negative rights are rights that are bestowed upon you by the creator, whomever or whoever you say the creator is, right? That's a negative right. A positive right is given to you through statute or law, aka, for example, abortion, right? You're given a positive right. It's not a right endowed given to you by the creator. It's a right given to you by man, right? That's a positive right. So that we got it clear on that, right? Because remember, a negative right does not require government permit or permission. Kind of keep it like that, right? When you look at it, oh, I want to do this. First question you should ask is, should the government do this? Or should it be any part of this? And if it's a no, it's a negative right. It should be a negative right, right? And that's kind of where the Ninth Amendment comes into play, right? But again, right? Any permit system that treats a fundamental right, a natural right, right, is government granted privilege because it's a permit system, right? And we have to keep chipping away at that system to the point where it diminishes the state power so low that they can't do nothing but roll over for the individuals, right? And this includes people in Chicago, right? People in Illinois, right? You got, they're probably one of the toughest states to get a concealed carry card in, right? But the people have to chip away at the state and say no, 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 absolutely not, no, because your rights are your rights. Period. The last case study I have is the repeal of regulations. This is pretty simple. We've talked about this one before, right? That and this is the most direct and proactive approach to incrementalism, right? Is the wholesale repeal of regulations, right? Because this just the sheer volume of government rules have grown into an unaccountable regulatory state. You've heard me talk about the regulatory state and the administrative state before, right? And the regulatory state literally stifles innovation and economic growth. Again, right? Going back to what I mentioned previously, if you have to get an occupational license to make a living, that's the regulatory state stopping you and putting up barriers, right? Right. And the opposite of this, right? Right. This is literally the opposite of what's called the ratchet effect, right? Now, a great example, right, of this comes. from a number of states that have adopted one in, two out rules, right? Like kind of Trump how did his first term, right? One in, two out, right? Or sunset or add sunset clauses to regulations, right? Which means that every new regulation an agency wants to impose, it must first identify and eliminate two existing ones, right? Other laws, like some of those like passed here, right, create review commissions that scrutinize old and outdated regulations with the explicit goal of repealing them, right? And now, in my eyes, this approach is invaluable because it institutionalizes a skeptical view of government growth, right? It also forces bureaucrats to prove that a new regulation is more beneficial than two existing ones, right? It is the incrementalist strategy that doesn't just block new growth, but actively and systematically rolls back the size of the state. Now, you heard me mention the ratchet effect, right? And we'll kind of get into that here just real in short time, right? Because the ratchet effect is the counter argument to incrementalism, right? And this idea, if I remember correctly, is Robert Higgs is the name of the historian that came up with the ratchet effect, right? And he says basically the ratchet effect is that the state grows easily during a crisis, right? Be it a war, a recession, or a pandemic, right? But never, but almost never shrinks back to its original size, aka the old normal, right? The temporary emergency powers, they become permanent. The temporary regulations become law, and emergency spending becomes a new baseline. Have we not seen this? Right? CARES Act, right? Did we not see that? Hmm? Inflation Reduction Act, hmm? All passed through an emergency, right? Now, let's take a minute. Let's think about our own history in this country, right? The Great Depression, right? Let's go back to the Great Depression. The Great Depression led to the creation of massive government programs that still exist today, doesn't it? Social Security, right? Right? Hmm. The response to 9/11 gave us DHS, right? And we have to admit, though there's some good work that comes out of DHS, it is an enormous bureaucracy on paper, on its face. It is an enormous bureaucracy, right? That never rolled itself back, right? And most recently, right, during the COVID-19 pandemic, right, we saw an unprecedented expansion of government power from business lockdowns to massive stimulus spending, right? And remember, once the state acquires new power, it does not willingly give it up, right? And when the government does give it up, right? People still give it back to the government after the government says, we don't want this, aka, I'm going to get the jab anyway, even if you say no. Yeah, yeah, go ahead with that big. Go ahead. My point of bringing that up. But the thing is, again, incrementalism is a very slow and frustrating march, right? But is it truly the way to a minimal state? Right? I will always answer and argue that question based on the fact it offers real, tangible results and it builds public support. But if it feels like a constant struggle against the state's natural tendency to grow, right? I mean, we find one thing, they want to grow somewhere else, right? It's like we got you ever seen a cartoon where the boat starts springing leaks and you're just constantly trying to put your hands over the holes to try to stop ship from sinking. That's kind of that personally. That's how I feel when I say, "Oh, I got something to head off over here." They spring another leak over there. Like, oh God, I got to run over here. You know, my name is not Mr. Fantastic. I can't stretch everywhere. Okay. And this is why public support is very, very important, right? Because it is a battle fought on a battlefield where the terrain is constantly shifting in favor of the state. This is why we all have to come together and just do the damn thing, right? Oh, we've came to the end. I appreciate y'all for hanging in with me for a little bit here. Um, Next time on next week's episode 3, we're going to explore the other side of the coin, right? We'll examine the Revolutionaries Manifesto, right? Looking at the moments in history where a fundamental shift reshaped society and whether that can be a model for a minarchist future. Until then, keep thinking about that long road, y'all, and pray, chase, scream from the mountaintops or the swamp side, depending on where you are in the world, and praise life and liberty. Until next time, y'all, remember, love your neighbors, love your family, but ultimately, if you do not love yourself, you can't love anybody else. Until next time, y'all, peace and love.